Welcome to Career Conversations with Lazard Plus, where we explore important workplace topics that don't get taught in the classroom. Success is made up of many intangible factors that we want to demystify. So listen, reflect, and act upon what you learn through this conversation. Welcome back to Lazard Plus's podcast, Career Conversations, where in this month's episode, we will focus on two really important factors that contribute immensely to career success. That is value and visibility. They matter for progression and promotion, but I find that people often struggle with the concept of being visibly valuable in the workplace. Perhaps it's the fear of coming across as too forward, or the fear of failure or rejection when they put themselves out there. So I'm really excited that for today's episode, we've been able to get Mary Moshopo Adeyemi to talk about this really important conversation or topic. Mary actually spoke to us at Lazard Plus last year. So it's great to welcome her again on today's episode. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back with Lazard. Exciting.
We are really excited, really excited. So we're going to just kick off the conversation and go straight into it. So we want to start off by talking about becoming a person of value. So before we dive into that really important topic, could you just tell us a bit about yourself for those that maybe haven't heard your story or kind of know who you are? Just give us, a brief overview of you and your journey.
No, awesome, of course. Thank you for having me again. So my name is Mary Moshopo Adeyemi. I would say sort of my three words that describe me are that I am passionate, purposeful, and people-oriented. And I get to live those three traits out in multiple spaces. So first in my day job, as I would say, my career as a finance professional, I've always worked with sort of leading investment banks for the last 15 years, and I get to really do work with really amazing people, drive, business forward with a lot of passion, and, really do like things that I really care about in the workplace. And then also as a social entrepreneur, I run a social first organization called Visibly, where we are mandated to improve the outcomes of Black women in the marketplace through inspiration, coaching, and community. So generally very community minded. I do a lot of things in the charity space, boards, so on and so forth. And I guess the new title that I have is that I'm an author. So I'm an author of a book called Visible Strengths. And yeah, I'm sure we're going to talk a lot more about visible strengths through this conversation. So that's a little bit about me.
That's great. I guess just, you mentioned about your social enterprise visibility. It plays on the word of visibility. Can you just tell us a bit about that before we delve into the book and why you felt that was necessary?
Yeah, and actually the themes of why visibility and also sort of why I wrote the book kind of come together. I think when I started my career, 2007, so right in the middle of the financial crisis, it was just a very, very different time. I think back to myself then as sort of young, eager, knowledgeable to an extent, in brackets, as knowledgeable as you can be when you're starting your career, but completely clueless. Just had like no idea. So in hindsight now, I'm just like, oh, wow, like I really had no idea. And I think, just sort of journeying through those early stages of my career with, for me, like very, very little guidance. I grew up with my parents lived in Nigeria. I was the only one that moved out of the country, lived here. I also come from a background of like public sector workers. And so the whole idea of like working in the private sector was not something that I necessarily had a lot of access to. So I didn't feel like I had like as much guidance, both in terms of like working in corporate, but also working in the UK. So there were lots of implications for that. And so every day I basically just kind of had to work my way through, the tunnel of career and try and sort of, figure my way out. And it wasn't the easiest pathway, but I would say like, because of that is, why I am why I learned a lot, I guess, but also why I'm really passionate about sort of young professionals coming into the workplace, in particular for the first time, especially those from like, who are women or from ethnic minority backgrounds, as I feel like they tend to probably have a similar experience to what I've had in that, the lack of affinity or, kind of that the disparity of sort of their own cultural upbringing could mean that when they come into the workplace, they're actually a lot more lost than people are aware. And so I think in that sense, I think after kind of finding my own light, I started thinking, I really want other people who look like me to not have to go through that because I could see
Yeah.
that they were going through it actively. I surveyed the issue. I had lots of conversations, and I just knew like this was like a big thing. And so I
Yeah.
started Visibility really as like a platform to actually showcase the amazing work that Black women were doing in multiple spheres. As I guess for me, it was just around, if other people can see that, there are women who look like them in their
Yeah.
ecosystem, whether it's in the same organization or somewhere close, it just really kind of, triggers something in your mind. And that was a big thing for me with one of my key sponsors in my career, was just actually seeing him in the role meant that I had
Yeah.
these limiting beliefs kind of dispelled. So I think there was that, but then also as we kind of went down the pathway of inspiration, it kind of then became like actually, people are inspired or they want to get inspired, but then what do they actually do the next day? After I
Yeah.
watch an episode of a show in the evening, what does my Monday morning look like? And how can I
Yeah.
actually practically put these things into action and actually start walking in the footsteps of these women that I'm super inspired by. And so that was really what opened up the sort of more career strategy, coaching arm of the work that we do. And I started running workshops and just kind of doing a lot more hands-on work. And I think all of that, the intel from all of that, my own personal experiences and the stories of the many, many women I have the privilege of interacting with every day, um, and beyond even women, just many professionals, and also
Yeah.
my experience as a manager and as sort of a people leader. I kind of just put all of that, so like all of that heart into Visible Strengths. And so Visible Strengths is really a book about how career professionals can accelerate their career
Yeah.
by learning how to capitalize on their strengths, contribute value, and communicate results. So
That's awesome.
a lot there, but it's a bit of a pathway. But those two things definitely are not disjointed and just kind of align really well, I think.
Yeah, and you said so many things there. So I love the fact that you were just talking about actually making women visible, like people that didn't know, and in a broad range of industry sectors. And I remember when Visibility first started, you had like loads of interviews, and from self-made bakers to business owners, private equity. Like there were so many like different women, and I think what was the beauty of it was just actually seeing the diversity in their journeys of how they got there, which was super inspiring. And you mentioned kind of just from your personal experience, like just having no idea. And actually I went to an event, I think a few weeks back, for Black History Month, and they were talking about a mentoring program, and somebody used a really, I think, accurate analogy about the world of work. He was like, for some, going into the world of work is literally going into a dark room with a blindfold and literally being like, make your way, like just go, like get to the other end of the room. And when
You
he
know,
said that, I was like, that is so true.
oh,
Because actually, if you don't have, a family member in the industry, the network, maybe the school you went to, for people to put their arm around you and be like, look, this is how you navigate. You literally just have to make your mistakes and learn from them. So I love the fact that you are kind of taking all of this and actually putting it into the hands of people that if they're passionate, if they're driven, they don't have to make the same mistakes we did. Because I joined in the 2007-8 gang and I had no clue. None at all. And it's like, actually, if we knew what we know now, then like our careers maybe would be in a completely different trajectory than they are today. So I love kind of so much of what you said. And yeah, and I guess kind of, you know, what is it that made you kind of change your mindset? So you said you literally were kind of just there from a family of, public sector workers. You were, Nigerian, like kind of grew up in Nigeria. So your network wasn't really here. So what was it that kind of really made you shift in your mindset to be like, wow, okay, maybe it is more than just working hard and, getting excellent results? Like, what was it that changed for you?
yeah. What changed? I think a lot of it actually was just intervention. I would say early intervention for me, because I frankly would just have continued down the same pathway. So I guess
And when you say early intervention, how long into your career is early
Yeah.
intervention?
I probably felt probably confused for the most part, for lack of a better word, for probably the first 3 years. And when I say confused, it's a weird statement because it's not like I didn't understand what I was doing at work, but it was just the style with which I was doing it. So I would, I was a portfolio manager, slash credit underwriter, and so I knew like the function of the role. I had studied accounting and finance in school, so working with numbers and that type of thing wasn't strange to me. And so I felt like I had sort of those underlying skills and knowledge to at least sort of kickstart and be a decent analyst. And so I would do that. And then, I would always then get, feedback time would come, and effectively I would just get the same feedback, like, just blah, basically. Like I was never
What
exceptional,
was blah?
but I was never bad. No one could ever say I was bad.
In the middle bucket, the middle bucket.
In the middle. You're just in the middle. They're not gonna fire you because you're not bad at your job. They don't have the grounds to say you're bad at your job. You show up every day, you come in early, you do all the stuff, you stay late, you do, and back in the day, I mean this is pre-Gen Z, right? So back in the day, you stayed at work till your boss left. Like
And you were back before sunrise.
exactly. So you did the whole like, you know, clock watching and what was the term we used to use?
FaceTime.
FaceTime. You did the whole FaceTime thing. Like, so I did the most
Dinner
of all of
meals, the meals at dinner time,
everything.
taxi home.
Everything. So we did all of that. And you know that you're putting in the work, at least, somebody asked you to do X, you did X. And that was just what it was. But when I say confused, I mean like I would do the work, but I didn't quite understand why I was doing it or what it was leading to. I just didn't get the big picture uh,
Yeah.
of all of that. So I think, so when I would get to like reviews, it was never stellar. It was just always like, okay, here we are again. Okay. Um, and then I realized that the one thing that people couldn't fault me for was the quality of my work. But I was never the first out of the gate in terms of people saying, I want to work with her.
Mm.
And I didn't feel like I was building relationships. I saw people in the organization who I knew could do not even do half of what I could do, but they were getting opportunities. They were
Wow.
getting these like working on these interesting projects. They were working on like, new product development stuff. It had like big clients on their roster. Um, I just realized like these guys were getting opportunities that I wasn't getting. And by guys, I mean, so I'm saying that very, very generally, like not necessarily speaking about gender. But these people were
You were
getting
getting
more,
passed up for opportunities.
and I just felt like I wasn't getting that. I had people in my cohort who would like travel for work, and that was not even an opportunity that was even presented to me. So there was a lot of confusion in that space. And I think for me, early intervention then meant there was a point, I think maybe in my fourth year, after being told repeatedly, you're not visible. You're really good, but nobody really knows who you are. Your business
Mm.
partners don't know who you are. When I asked for feedback, people had to like pause and go, actually, Mary, 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 who's Mary? And then when they now mention like, oh, the analyst on this deal, they're like, oh, okay, okay, yeah, 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 yeah. So my name wasn't really ringing a bell for anyone. I clearly wasn't impactful enough personally for people to feel like they needed to even remember me
Yeah.
anyway. So I was doing this the stuff that needed to be done. I couldn't be faulted, but I wasn't, first pick. And you have to be first pick, right? If you want to progress in the organization, you have to be first pick. Like first pick is when they say exceeds expectation. What they're saying is when they compare you to your peers, you are
Yeah.
memorable and the value add is beyond what they can see as comparable. Um,
And it's funny because actually you probably were comparable, but they just didn't know. So
hmm,
it's like it wasn't known to people that actually Mary could do the work, even though like when you benchmark yourself, you probably were doing a lot more work, or you were doing a lot of work. You were working hard, but it was just going under the radar.
yeah, totally. And so it was when I think I remember, and at the time I was also studying for like my ACCA, so there was also this distraction of, she's doing her school and all of that. And I just remember then once like we had the massive shakeup at the firm, and a lot of people left, and then there was a new hire or someone who moved into our team. And that's the person I would actually say was my first like sponsor. At the time, I didn't even have this language. I didn't know what sponsor was, but in hindsight, I'm like, that is exactly what a sponsor is. And his name was Ade, and he became my manager. And I remember coming in and actually seeing like a black guy on the table and thinking, oh, this is your new manager. I was first of all like a little bit thrown back because I'm like, first, I'm used to being the only black person in the building. Like, I've learned to make my peace with that. And so suddenly here I was, not just that the person was like working, on my floor, but they're actually my manager. And I had to like, and he's also Nigerian. So I had to like, okay, how do my interactions, like how am I going to speak to this guy different from how I spoke to everyone else? So there was a little bit of a difficult landing, I think. I think we had to kind of find our way. But I think he was probably the first person to start helping me decipher like the feedback that I was getting or that I had been getting. He was very like I remember the sort of first conversations that we had, and he was just really about like, what do you do for the firm? And I was all about just like, well, I write this report and I do this and I do that, and I was very operational in my answer. And he was kind of, and I think in hindsight, like his immediate message to me is when I ask you like, what do you do for the firm? You need to really think about what is the strategic goal of the firm, and then how do you
Yeah.
fit into all of that? And I just didn't have an answer for that. And he actually asked me, like, what do you do beyond like the seat that you're in? Like, okay, your day
So
to day.
beyond your day job.
Yeah, beyond your day job, what are you doing? What other agenda are you moving forward? And I just didn't have anything. And at this point, I had already gone into a bit of a cave with the constant feedback, this whole visibility thing. I didn't get it. I was like, you can see me. I mean, in particular, like there's only one who looks like me. So clearly I'm not invisible. And so I was getting repeated feedback. But I didn't get the sort of the constructive methodology of how I now became more
Yeah.
visible. I didn't get
So
that.
just on that, Mary, when you were getting that type of feedback, did it impact your morale, your motivation, your desire to be at the firm? Like what did it, yeah, like kind of what did it do
Impact. No,
for?
absolutely. Because like it's like, I mean, how do you feel, even if you're just in a group of friends, how do you feel if every time someone just says, oh, we don't see you, we don't see you, we don't see you, and they're just saying it repeatedly, and I'm just like, what do you mean? Like I'm here.
Yeah.
And then I guess because of sort of that, my being like pretty much the only black female in the I was not the only ethnic minority, but I was the only black person for years. And so when people say that, but they don't really give you the next phrase, what you
Yeah.
start hearing eventually is, because you don't look like us, or we can't connect to you, then you're just invisible. And that, just as a human, is just a very
Wow.
difficult thing to accept, because you're just thinking, I'm literally standing here in front of you. Like how am I invisible? And I've never been mousy. I've always been a little like talkative, a little bit loud. I probably laughed the loudest around, like, in our section. I've always kind of had that. So for me, I just like, I don't get this whole like feedback. It just didn't really follow for me. But eventually I just kind of think, why can't you see me? And so I internalized that as just kind of code
And
that
I and I
people
and I
can.
love and even just picking up from what you said, because you said actually you kind of got the feedback and it stopped there, but there was no methodology as
Yeah,
to actually this is how you get people to see you more. Like there was none of that. And again, I think I often say this, I think those are the types of things that aren't taught in the classroom. And it is probably the side conversation with somebody that has been there, done that, and can look, this is what you need to do. So I love even the questions that, this colleague was asking you, like, what agenda are you pushing forward? What do you do for the firm? Even the way you answer that question needs to be thought of and measured. And so let's just unpack that. So because I really want us to kind of drill down, let's give people the methodology. So first of all, let's talk about like what is value in the workplace. Like if we think about it, everybody that is hired by a company, you must be valuable because people are willing to pay you for your time to deliver that service.
yeah.
So how would you define value? Like as an individual, I'm in Lazard, you're working, like how do you define value? Let's
Yeah.
break it down for people.
No, good question. And there's the phrase that I always use, and I always say, like, value is in the eye of the beholder. Like, it's ultimately, you don't actually define your value, it's the other person. And so that's will be the first place to start, is that, what how you contextualize value is actually not in your hands. And so the work around value and defining value is, is really now being able to look around corners and look beyond yourself. But I think I always use this analogy to say, like, think about what compels you to buy a product. Typically you're saying to yourself, I have a problem and I think that this product is going to solve that problem. So it's raining outside. I'm going to buy an umbrella because the umbrella is going to protect me from the rain. I need to do some word processing so a computer or whatever would, make it make sense. And so that's the reason why, you're purchasing it. And I guess the reason why the manufacturer of said product kind of created it. So it's the purpose for which something exists. So that's why, like, I would say, like, that's actually the first way I would define value is it's the purpose for which something exists. So bringing that into the workplace, what is value for you being in that particular workplace? So what is the purpose for which you exist in this place? And I think it's kind of now contextualizing that. And that usually, gathering that intel probably starts from even like the point when you were first like hired.
Yeah.
Or from interview, what is the specific problem that this organization was having when they said, we're going to create this job description.
But even just building on that, though, the beauty of it is that it's constantly evolving. So you may have been brought in to do one thing, but if external factors change, actually the purpose of your existence may change. So I think to become a person of value, you actually need to be very observant and actually understand when things are changing so that you can adapt accordingly and not say that, oh, this is what I want to do to be valuable. Because if it's in the eye of the beholder, if the beholder no longer wants that thing and now wants something else, do you know what that something else is? How do you decipher that? So I think that's really actually quite profound.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is where I always use the analogy of products because it's just the same thing. If we think about ourselves as a product, I know you're not a lifeless thing, but if you think about yourself as a product, I think it really opens your mind to like possibilities. Like, when, as the industry is changing, as technology is changing, you want the companies that products to, to
like the iPhone 1 to the iPhone, what are we on now?
So exactly, I think we're like 13 or I don't even know where we are now, but yeah, like you're 14 now, I think. So you want people to you want the companies that are producing to respond, but in order for them to respond, they're watching the times, and beyond even watching the times, they're almost telling you where the times are going. They're creating the times. So
Oh wow.
it's not just like a question of delivering, but it's also about innovating. So that's a whole different ball game, right? But that means you have to have your ears to the ground, your eyes to the ground. You need to be able to know what is happening in the industry, what is happening with the firm. You want to know how leadership is changing, because ultimately a company is just a collection of people. It's not really much more than that. And so even just the Rubik's Cube of people moving around can completely change how, the divisional strategy, or, how somebody sees, and we've all been, especially in banking, we've all been there where like, we have this new leader, suddenly this business that was in the front line and this other business that was in the back line are now combined because that's just the leader's vision. And the moment that person is not in that seat, those two basically go back to being what they were. But, understanding how, sort of key stakeholders across the firm or the organization you're working with, how they are defining value now helps you now figure out where you plug in. Right. So that's the way I think about it.
And I think actually the whole analogy of products makes complete sense. So even, and I guess, within an organization, a corporate organization, you have those fixed windows where you get to reevaluate, right? Like your mid-year review, your year-end review, like actually what version of Mary am I on? What version of Tracy am I on? Like, am I still on Tracy, Tracy 1.2?
Yeah, exactly.
Or am I, every time on our Lazard, phones, it's always like software update, and you're like, again? But actually they're updating because things are changing and the interface is changing. So again, I think irrespective of where you sit in an organization, things are always changing. And actually, what does your future role look like? Have you even sat down to think about it? Do you know what other organizations are doing when it comes to your role? And even asking ourselves a simple question, well, what does this mean for us? Like, that's a great way to see if actually an upgrade is needed. So I think that's really, really
All the time. Yeah, and I think, I mean, we get to do that a lot. Like, I mean, watch the news, and even now I try to do that in my everyday life. Not just watching passively, because it's so easy to just tune off. But you
Mm.
watch the news, you just pause and ask yourself the question, what
What
does
does
this
this
mean?
mean?
Yeah, or
Yeah.
what does this mean
Yeah.
for me? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you can now even start broadening that out. But if you don't pause to really think about that, then
Yeah.
you can actually miss something quite pivotal,
Yes.
very important. It's all like data, so it's just like data coming at you, but the way you turn it into information
Yeah.
is when you pause and actually say, all this stuff that's calibrating, what does this mean for me? How is this
Yeah.
going to impact me? And the moment you can do that, it's like, actually, you know what? This doesn't change my day to day. I'm good. Or you can say, that might change the way I am comped. That might change the way I might progress in the firm. That might change the day to day, like expectations around like the way I interact with clients, both internal and external. So it's always about like, as you get this new data pieces, which we
Yeah.
talk about like how you get the data, you always have to pause and calibrate that into like useful information by just asking the question like, how does this impact me?
Yeah. And I think even that can be done at a team level as well. So actually, if teams are constantly thinking, like actually setting time aside away from the business as usual to stop and think and be like, actually, what does this mean for us? Even
Yeah.
if it's like just taking 10 minutes of that collective intelligence, you could create so much value
Yeah.
by the different things that come out of that. So no, that's great. Before we finish this part one, because we've spoken a lot about value, what it means, and we're going to go on to being visibly valuable. You spoke about language. So you were saying that actually 3 years into your career, you didn't even have the language
Mhm.
that you should have had. So when you talk about language, what language for the person entering into the world of work, starting off their career, or at any stage in your career, what language should people have? Like, should people know what a sponsor is? Like, tell us a bit about the language that is really important as we
Yeah.
think
Oh,
about navigating.
gosh. There are many. I think for me, just going off sort of my book, I always say like first thing you should always know is strengths. And just, self-awareness is the bedrock of any kind of success you're gonna have. And so just kind of, having language for your own strengths is always like a great place to start. Then you definitely have to have language for value. We've been talking about it here. Hopefully we talk about it a little bit more. But what is valuable? Who are your stakeholders? What do they care about? So stakeholders are just basically people who have a vested interest in, whatever it is you're delivering, your performance, your progression, those are people that are impacted by it, or who you are impacted by. And so those are your stakeholders. So knowing who they are and then knowing what they care about, and then how can you put yourself in front of them more and more. And that's what we talk about, this concept of visibility, aka just marketing yourself, really. So there's that. Obviously, you hear a lot about networks. So that's definitely one. And it's just really the collection of people around you that are going to help you be more efficient and are also going to help you um, optimize, right?
Yeah,
So and that could mean a lot of different things in there. So, and a lot of different groups of people. So they're all, in my book I talk about sort of your personal networks who are there for advice, and they're cheering you on, and your champions and your family and your friends, and you are their biggest priority. But then you're now going to like your operational networks of those who help you get the day-to-day done. And you need to know them, and that's from like your assistants to the lawyers on your team to your teammates, your analysts, associates, like, people around you. And then you have sort of your strategic network that is helping you look around corners. And those are like your
yeah,
sponsors, your, people who are giving you that high level advice of how to navigate and all of that. And that collection of people is what we talk about like as networks, and they can be internal and external. So, um, and I'm
and
just thinking of what else.
and
I
that
think
and that I mean that is quite comprehensive though, and I can imagine actually when people start, they're not really actively thinking about that or even documented that or really kind of know actually the role different relationships are playing when it comes to their career, and also the role that they play in other people's careers as
yeah.
well. So I know you and I talk a lot about relationship capital, networks, all of this stuff. So it's actually like so important. Straight but to it, how important is it to be visibly valuable in the workplace?
Oh gosh. It is critical. It's probably on the scale of importance, it is in that critical level, because ultimately you cannot influence, you cannot, empower, you cannot rise to any level of significance if people don't even know who you are, what you do.
Wow.
And again, I always go back to this thing around a product. It's just imagine doing all of this work. So Apple brings out like all of these products every like year. So imagine them hiring all these people, doing all this research, doing all this good work, delivering the best and the best and the best of the products, and then they go and hide it under like
No
a
one knows
bushel.
about them.
Like, nobody knows about it. It actually sounds ridiculous when you talk about it like that, but that's actually what a lot of us do every single day at work.
Wow.
Is we are investing time, we're showing up, we're doing good work, useful work, but then we stop there. And we don't do the pivotal work of actually sharing with people what we've done, why we've done it, how we've done it, and why it is the most like it is the answer to their most pressing problems.
Wow.
That is really what the whole concept of visibility is about. Is about, or should I say the concept of valuable visibility is about knowing what is valuable, delivering that value in the most innovative way that you can, but not stopping there, making sure that the people who need to know that the work that you've done exists are
Yeah, because it could help them. It could help them with their work.
yeah, no, because ultimately if you are delivering value, we talked about the last time we had this conversation, we talked about what is value. It's the purpose for which something exists. It's the reason why you're hired. It's the reason, so that means it's already the work that you're doing. If it is valuable, is already relevant. It's already supposed to be solving problems, but sometimes people are not even aware. And then also sometimes you might think you're doing something for a particular purpose, but it could actually be useful in many more spheres. And it just creates this, sharing the work that you do creates this ripple effect. It lets people, first of all, know the work that you're doing, but it lets people also reimagine existing processes, systems, or whatever in light of the new thing that you've done. Ultimately, as I say, like, and I'll keep on going back to like Apple, Apple created a phone, great. But by sharing that a phone has camera capabilities, it lets other people know that, okay, maybe I don't need that Kodak after all, and I can just use my phone.
Yeah.
Right. So it just switches. It creates this opportunity. Like I did this for this. The primary use of a phone is to like nobody will buy a phone if all it did was take pictures. So the primary use has to still be there. The reason why I bought it is because I need to get on a call and I need to But why I buy this versus a Nokia is because I want to be able to do these other things. Right. And so by sharing the work that you do, you actually give other people the opportunity to revalue your work.
Wow.
Creating new opportunities and spaces for it to exist.
And I love that because actually, I don't know which phone kind of company created the first phone with a camera with a phone, but actually now there's no way you can buy a phone without a camera. So it actually changed the game for everybody.
Completely.
So actually, when you are valuable and it's visible, then actually you can actually help there be an evolution for the greater good of like kind of much broader. I feel like we need to do courses on like human marketing.
Honestly, I mean, to be fair, that's actually how I started writing the book, and I thought, okay, so I don't know, maybe Visible Strengths 2.0 would definitely be something more for like people in business and things like that, because I just think it's so critical. And much more of us at work need to have that business mind, right? We need to have that entrepreneurship mind.
Yeah.
Like sometimes because we feel we're not necessarily running a business, quote, we hang our entrepreneurial side like outside. But I really encourage people to bring that into the workplace because frankly, you are an entrepreneur. You're just inside an organization, but the product
and that creates value.
Yeah, and the product is you, right? The product is you. The product is you. And the moment you can keep telling yourself that the product is me, it's not an external thing. And I actually have a very enabling ecosystem here of customers, of suppliers, of advisors, of innovators. It just changes the game of how you show up every day at work.
Yeah. Awesome. In your book, you talk about visibility strategies that people can use. Are you able just to kind of share some nuggets around that? Like, how can people think about becoming visible? What's the methodologies behind being visible in the workplace?
Yeah, I do. I think I have kind of two chapters dedicated to this like concepts of visibility, but I think sort of in terms of broad strokes. So before we go into sort of specific strategies or tactics, I would say, broad strokes around visibility. should really, I mean, we've talked about this, be a person of value is always like the first start. So if we can, assume that that's a given and that's what you're doing at work, then great. But the next thing is actually you need to learn to just like tell people what you do. It's amazing. It seems super simple, but you just need to just let me tell people what you do. People that you meet have the right, I use the word language again, but have the right sort of phrases or language where you can say, hey, this is what I do, this is why I do it, this is how it's helping you, and this is
Yeah.
where you can find me. So that elevator pitch, as people call it, being able to tell what you do. So whether it's in a team meeting, in a town hall, in a, random coffee chats, master that skill. Also like opportunities for you to be visible are really around like sharing your knowledge and also sharing your story. So training people is one super effective way of showcasing your expertise and subject matter expertise.
Yeah.
Right? So whatever it is that a lot of us really, really downplay what we know, like the knowledge we have, because it comes so maybe potentially comes so naturally to us, and it's you might have figured it out a long while, but there's so many people around you where that is just a non-existent piece of
Yeah.
information, and actually you can really, really help, like add
Yeah.
value to them, but also showcase like your expertise in the process. And then sharing your story, we just live in an age where like people don't just want to know what you've done, they want to know sort of how you did it, the
Yeah. The journey.
pathways, the journey. So don't feel shy to kind of weave that into like into the work that you're doing. People care about that. And
Yeah.
then in terms of like doing that, you can do that one-on-one, but you can also do that by like leveraging community, so joining affinity networks, looking beyond sort of your own seat and making sure like you are in spaces where you can collaborate with others and go from a one-to-one strategy to a one-to-many is
Yeah.
definitely like, so go to volunteer events with people, work on, um, serve people together. And so that's actually one of the things that then if I lead into like very specific strategies that you can apply, in my book, I share kind of 5, but I was going to think about some of the key ones. It would be like, you know, ultimately the point about like having visibility strategies is like so that you don't forget to do it, because it's so easy, we're so busy that we can
Yeah.
easily kind of leave this thing like on the sidelines. But when you really have your visibility strategies, it just forces you to like prioritize visibility. And so one of the key things that I've seen people do is like performing actions that are like reoccurring activities. So when you're doing something that needs to be executed regularly or with a high frequency, even down to something quite small like sending a regular email or updates or new information in the industry, and you just own that process, and every week or every month you're the person whose email or name pops up in the email
Yeah.
box. There's just something about name recognition. People they don't know who you are, they don't know where you sit, they don't know what you look like, except you have one of those email things with the pictures. But they just know that Mary sends this thing, and if I have a question on this, that's the person I'm going to call. And so
Yeah.
again, just name recognition is just like base in terms of visibility.
So are you saying that it's good if you can find something that whereby it's consistent, that you're the person that can do that, kind of periodically?
Yeah, exactly. And that is probably the lowest hanging fruit actually, because there's always something to be done and there's always something you can own.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be big, it can actually be really small, but small and repetitive is good. I have a plethora of those, right? Like in the
Yeah.
organization that I work for. But just that is just key in terms of giving you opportunities to connect more people, send emails regularly and things like that.
And actually, one of the things, so in my role, I do a lot of project-based work. So it might be like we're working on an initiative or something. And I guess just coming back to value, I'm always thinking actually who else could benefit from this? Like, I sit in HR, we have colleagues in the US, in, all across the world, like maybe, it would be of interest to them. And even just offering to say, hey, like, happy to have a conversation about it if you want. Because again, like you said, if you've been in the weeds of this thing and you're the subject matter expert, actually to share with someone that has nothing to do with that
Yeah.
could create a lot of value, will be very valuable for them. And I think appreciative of actually thank you for thinking of me and
Yeah.
being willing to share with me. So I think that's true.
Yeah. Absolutely, because then, that way, one of the big issues around visibility is always about this idea of like, oh my God, it's obnoxious, it's self-promotion, oh my God, oh my
Mm,
God, oh my God. But if you're being value led about the visibility that you about your visibility, then it's no longer self-promotion, it's actually value promotion. So
Yeah.
you're spending work saying, I've done this is how it can be helpful. And so like some other strategies you can think about doing is, plugging yourself into activities that, are of a creative nature. So something like, blank, you have a blank sheet of paper, you're part of a group or a team that are creating something. Again, the value add is creativity. The impact for you is working in a team and driving something forward, being innovative. There's nothing attracts more attention than new stuff when it comes to like senior leadership. They want to know like, oh, what's going on, what are people
Yeah.
spending their time on, what's this new product, new thing, new service. You probably have a lot of posting meetings with people who you ordinarily not be in the room with. And it builds just it just builds a very significant skill set for you to realize like this thing didn't exist before, and because of me and the people I was in a group with, now it does, and it's helping so many people. Same goes for things where you can lead. So you may not necessarily be creating the idea, but you can lead the execution of
Yeah.
it. Is also like another opportunity. So the things like that, and I touched on a little bit around like this sort of idea of one-to-one versus a one-to-many strategy. There's also visibility is multiple touch points. How can I get to the most people the quickest? And so even things like cross geographical or cross departmental activities, down to even things like recruitment,
Yeah.
going with people to like, on recruitment field trips and things. And then you guys all come back and you're buddy. I know, you know what somebody else is doing elsewhere. And they also know what you're doing, and you can grab a coffee, and then, you leverage sort of that, you leverage them, and then you're able to leverage their own network as well. Same thing with geography, like working people across like your own space. The example you just gave is extremely is poignant on this. It's just, there are many things, but just if you have or you may not have to do every single strategy, but if you just figure out like this is what I lean into the most.
Yeah.
Like for me, creativity and leadership is key, because I know that that's sort of in my own strength zone. I like blank sheets of paper. I'm good at creating stuff out of nothing. I've done that repeatedly, and so I know like, and my leaders like now look to me for that.
Yeah.
Like that's definitely a skill set. She would pause and she would think about it
Yeah.
and come up with something. So I know that I just keep on so anything that's new, I'm always like me, I want it. I'm always jumping at the opportunity, because I know that it's my strength zone. It's gonna energize me and it's gonna make something work. And in that I can create, I can lead, but I can also like mix strategies. I can create with people across different departments. I can
Yeah.
create people across different geographies. I can create, and within my work I can send recurring emails, so I can blend the whole thing. So pick the one that works for you and do it.
And do you feel that so because you spoke about strengths, do you feel it's people have just seen that these are your strengths, or you've articulated that these are my strengths, by the way, and this is how I can help? So, because I'm just trying to understand, how can being visible open doors for people
Utilizing.
to be able to play to their strengths in the workplace?
I mean, it's a little bit of both. I think nobody reads minds. That's one thing that I think we need to get out of the habit, especially when you're starting your career. Quickly get out of the assumption that people will see the work that you're doing. One of my managers, I think was Adia, said to me, work doesn't speak, people do. You're not going to do work and then it's just going to be like, oh my God, nah. So sometimes it's part of the like, there's a place for you knowing that you're going to enjoy a certain type of work and putting your hand up for it, even if
Yeah,
it's challenging. So there's that onus for you as
that
well.
self-awareness
Yeah,
piece.
you need to know that. And sometimes you may not know that immediately. You might have to trial and error and realize, oh, I'll never do that one again. Nah, 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 nah. There's always going to be
Like working on the trading floor.
no thanks. I don't want that. So sometimes it's like trial and error. You put your hand up, a regulatory project, and then you realize, eek, can't do, me and regulators are on water. No thanks. And then you move on. So there's always gonna be that.
That self-discovery.
Yeah, but then once you figure it out and like this space I like for this reason,
Yeah,
then keep putting your hand up. And the moment people now, and that's the point where like, and then in your meetings, when people talk about, oh, what are you working on? Oh, I'm really working on this super cool project with this, I'm really enjoying it. That's you're sending a signal.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
a way of now you sending a signal to say, I like it. not only am I working on it, but I like it, versus going in and going, oh my God, this is super stressful. They're just really precious. Oh my God, oh my God. People can always see when the light bulb is on. You
Yeah,
can't avoid it, right? So in this dark room, your career dark room, when the light bulb goes on, you cannot miss it, right? You cannot miss it. That there's a light that's now shining on this person's head because they are now activating something that is in them, and it's a bright light. So people will always see it, but it takes kind of you also realizing it, enjoying it, putting your hand up, doing stuff, and they're like, actually, she likes it. And
yeah.
there's also gonna be a point where like the things that even you like, you may realize like it may not be the area you want to grow in. So you might
Mm,
actually have peaked. And
yeah,
for you, if you keep a growth mindset, you're probably always thinking about, okay, I've probably done enough of this now. I know I'm good at doing it, but I need a change. And so you have to
yeah,
pivot. But in
yeah.
pivoting and doing something new, you start the process again, right? You start the process
You
again.
become Mary 3.0.
Pretty much. And you're like, okay, now I'm doing this. Okay, now I like it. Now I have to signal to people that I want
This
to
is
do
what
more
I want to
of
do.
this, but I
Mm,
also want to do less of the stuff that you have now identified me with. It's kind of, if you
yeah,
think about actors, like Jennifer Aniston was always like the nice sort of girlfriend, the girl across the street type thing, because she just kept on doing roles like that.
yeah,
Never like, added something new, but you have to send the signal out that, hey,
yeah.
I can work, do an action movie, I can do this, I can do all this other stuff. Yeah.
So actually, within the workplace, there is an opportunity for people to reinvent themselves and actually be like, actually, you know, I've done this and I now feel like I'm trending towards this way. And and because you're visible and you're vocal, I think we need to add that vocal, visible, valuable, the V's,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
that allows you to kind of, I think, really maintain a really fulfilling career, like a career that does. And I think actually organizations that are able to engage people at that level are actually able to retain their best talent, because
yeah.
they and it's a two-way thing, right? It's up to the individual as well to be vocal about that. Actually, this is where I want to play, and this is why, and this is what I don't want to do. I want to do less of this. So that's great. I know
Yeah.
that we don't have much time, but what I wanted to just quickly get your thoughts on is just about external visibility. So we've spoken a lot about internal visibility. How important is external visibility? I have lots of kind of opinions on this,
Right.
but I would love to hear from you your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I can already tell where your opinions on this are, because it's one of those sort of thread lightly type areas, depending. But I would say, look, you are there is a responsibility, right? In the workplace and for your career to be like literally your chief marketing officer. Like you have this hat on that you're the CMO of product you or brand you, as I always kind of say. But in that, what is the role of a CMO, right? So it's brand curation, it's advertising and marketing. We've talked about a little bit about those two. But it's also about lead generation and like market intelligence. And that's where the external piece comes in,
Oh, I
because
love that, market intelligence.
you need to be able to look beyond your seat.
Mm,
And the way you do that is by making sure like the beyond your seat know that you exist.
mm,
So this is my role. I'm going to be visible for the value that I'm adding, but I also want to create the relationships that are going to be necessary to give me intel and motivation for me to make the next moves, or even to identify your next move. So it's not always like so external visibility is not just about when you're ready to make a move, but sometimes it's also part of your research process, getting to know people, getting to know what is out there, getting to know what else you might be interested in, getting to know what other opportunities there are, but also you have to be someone who learns to mark themselves to market.
yeah,
If
yeah,
you're in an organization for a very long time, the likelihood is that you're probably underpaid for your work, because why would people pay you more when they can afford, when they can get away with paying you less?
yeah.
We'll leave that there.
That's a whole nother episode.
But the point is that you want to leverage visibility outside to create those opportunities for you, so you can actually see and remind yourself of just how
Wow.
valuable you are rather than in your current seat. There are a number of things that does for you. And I also think that sometimes a lot of the stress that we feel inside our workplace is because we don't realize how many more opportunities you have outside of it.
Wow.
So the more you can do that, I think it gives you some peace such that like I'm choosing to be here, not that I have to be here. And it's an interesting one. So I definitely encourage it. I do think it is an art rather than a science, because in some cases, you know, obviously being visible outside of your current seat could create, what word shall I use? It can create
Tension.
some tension internally, and that's something that people have to navigate. It all just depends on where you work.
Yeah.
I think it's necessary. You have to think about that. And also for me, like, it's like your personal value. So, you know, go into the wild. Like, it's just what
Yeah.
it is. Like, you don't have to just sit still and just think, definitely add value where you are, but by all means, leverage LinkedIn or whatever to showcase yourself, to share your story, to share your knowledge, to connect with people, to do all of those things, because trust me when I say the tide turns very quickly.
Yeah.
And the moment, you know, you have to be prepared for the
Yeah.
tide to turn, because it's just inevitable. I mean, we've seen many tide turns recently, especially in the recent past with COVID, with our current economic situation, with all of that. The tide is turning.
Yeah.
And the people who are prepared, who have been doing their market intelligence and lead generation, are the ones who are going to survive and succeed.
They're not caught by surprise.
Yeah, they're not caught by surprise because they've been preparing for it. They've been planning
Yeah.
for it. They've been looking around corners, right?
They've been shaping the future.
Yeah, it's so important. It's so important. So I guess, just like, if I was to summarize all of that, is external visibility is great for just getting beyond your current seat and seeing what's out there. It's good for research, good for information. It's good for marking yourself, which is very,
Gives you career visibility.
yeah, and then it just gives you like a broader space. So a lot of opportunities come. My current role I got on LinkedIn, not without applying. Like, somebody seeing like my profile and whatever, and just seeing like, actually,
Tap you on the shoulder.
this is someone who can work here and we think we like. And then you have to then go through your interview process. But you definitely lose. You are costing yourself opportunities if you're not,
Known externally as well.
yeah, you're costing yourself opportunities. Yeah.
So, Mary, final and most important question. You've been with us. You've broken so many things down. Where can people find your book, Visible Strengths?
Visible Strengths is the place where books live, the most famous place where books live, which is Amazon. So you can definitely get copies of Visible Strengths both in digital format and in print, on Amazon, whether it's amazon.co.uk, amazon.com, or whatever your local Amazon is. You can definitely get it. If you are in regions where there's no Amazon, you can purchase it on my website, which is visibility.com/visible strengths book.
We'll put it in the show notes as well. So
that's the place to find it if you're not in a space. Amazon is the easiest, fastest, quickest way to get it. And we have a good system there that works really well. And so, yeah, or otherwise find me on social streets, connect with me, send me an email. I need a copy of your book. How can I get it? Yeah, I'm happy to always kind of give you, some pointers, point you in the right direction of how to get a copy.